Billy, obviously that's an impressive comeback victory. You guys showed that same fight against Sacramento. This time you were able to get over the hump. What were kind of the key points to you in that second half and overtime?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we certainly collectively did I think a better job on Edwards in the second half. Yeah, we kind of did that a little bit, and then I thought we did a better job pressing up on Towns on some of the catch and shoot opportunities he had there in the first half. I think when we were able to get stops, we were able to kind of get out and force a little tempo for us and generate some easy baskets. I thought Kobe's offense in the second half was huge, just the way he played. And, we had a couple possessions there in regulation that probably were not great, but for the most part, I thought we, coming down the stretch, moved the ball pretty well and got some good opportunities for ourselves. But I think I mentioned this. There's just things that we can control, right? Like the first half, the turnovers, and some like those. I still think we can get better at those things. And sometimes when you win, you have a tendency not to, like, everything's great, everything's perfect, And I still think there's things that we can get better at. But you can't. It was a great effort by them, the players. I mean, they all contributed. Torrey gave us really good minutes off the bench. I thought Andre and Vooch together was at least gave us some stabilizing force up front with as big as they are. That really helped. So I thought it was a real good, team effort all the way through.
Yeah, obviously a matchup decision to start Andre. What did you think about the way he played?
I thought he was great. I think one of the things, I probably got to help those guys with. We had yesterday in practice where we kind of, worked on it because I thought we would go to it. But the one thing that happened, and we tried to do some things in the second half that I think helped Vooch. But the one thing it did was with those two guys out there, sometimes it takes Vooch's short rolls into the pocket away because, Andre's either rolling and Vooch is popping. It's hard to have one guy rolling and another guy rolling behind him. So I think just things that we can do. We did some things in the second half that I think were a little bit more helpful to help Vooch get it in the pocket and make some decisions from there. But overall, I thought those two guys really played well together. And, Andre was really good on the glass. I thought he was physical, even on his post-ups when we found him. Shots we missed, he was chasing down. So, considering we hadn't done it a lot, I thought that both of them played well together.
Did you get any early word on Torrey?
It was just his ankle. I don't know how severe it is. I obviously, first thing that comes to your mind is his plantar fasciitis, but it wasn't that. So it was his ankle. I don't know how bad it is.
Torrey had that big block on Cat in the regulation right after you just put him in there for I think Drummond.
Yeah.
Did you put him in there specifically to guard Cat on the point?
Yeah, they were. It's hard because he's so versatile and he posts and he can shoot and he's really good moving on the perimeter, and it was just like an opportunity coming out of a timeout just to throw a different look at him. Where. Because what they were doing was they were doing a lot of flaring for him and popping him and running him over top of screens on the perimeter. And, it's hard for Vooch and it's hard, for Andre. I thought both guys did a really good job, as best they could there and for most of the game. But I just thought maybe putting Torrey out there, just would give him a different look, because they certainly were not posting him as much against those two guys. It was more on the perimeter where he was getting some catch and shoot opportunities. So, Torrey made a great block and he tried to get down into the post a few times. I thought Torrey did a really, really good job of just trying to hold him up, and we kind of showed a crowd and provided some help when we needed to.
Billy, you touched on a little bit just the Drummond and Vooch pairing, kind of some different things you did, but what do you think was working so much better tonight with that than maybe it has in the past, and how do you think you can just kind of learn from that moving forward?
Why it hasn't been maybe as successful, those two guys together? I mean, it hasn't happened a lot. They haven't played a lot. I think sometimes, I remember we did some of that when I was in Oklahoma City with Enes Kanter and Steven Adams, and we were playing against San Antonio in the playoffs, and all the numbers said it was bad, and I think sometimes you have to, when you look at the numbers, you have to watch the film against the numbers, because there's times that they could actually be playing well, but they may have missed some shots, missed some free throws, things didn't go well, turnovers, and the other team scores, and it looks like it's a bad combination. We can work on it more, but it's hard because sometimes, like with the way they were using Towns, they were not using Towns to post him. They were running Towns off flare screens, pick and pops, where they were making those guys chase him, and he's good at that. He can do it because then once he catches it, he's playing against closeouts, so he's driving the ball and he's getting downhill. So there's a lot to it. and that's why sometimes when you're a little bit, smaller, it's a little bit easier to negotiate those things. I think we can work on it and get better at it. I thought today was a good start, that those guys did a good job. A lot of times we've gone to it, we've been down, quite honestly, to throw a different wrinkle into the game to try to change momentum. But against some of the bigger teams, I think we can look to do that.
In the second half, you guys outscored the team was 92-54. How impressed were you with the team's defense overall?
I thought that was big. It helped us. They're an elite defensive team. I think they're by far the #1 defensive team in the league right now. And they have a lot of different things they do. They turn you over. They don't give up second shots. They don't foul. They kind of force you into a lot of contested shots. Like, they're really elite defensively. And in order to play against that defense, you've got to generate some missed shots just to get out in transition in some broken floor situations. And I don't know what it was they scored in the first half, 72 points. That's a lot of times taking the ball out of the net and allowing them to set the defense. Plus, the other thing, too, is they were getting to the free throw line, and we turned it over. So that majority of the first half, we never really got into any good tempo or flow. The second half, when we were able to put together stops, we were kind of able to get out in transition and maybe take away some of their length and size.
What did you really make of the last two games, the first half deficits? Was it mostly the three-point shooting? I mean, Sacramento also made a lot in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when you look at the game, it's been both of those games. Our guys, I think we can play better in those two first halves, and sometimes against Sacramento, when you're down by 30 points, I don't want to say it's an excuse, but it's easy to say, you had too great of a mountain to climb to kind of get back in. You probably exhaust yourself trying to overcome the deficit. And certainly we put ourselves in that situation again. And that's not to take away Minnesota and how well they played. I mean, they made shots, made plays, turned us over, got out in transition. I think the reason why we were down so much is I think they had maybe 16 fast break points, and I think of some of those points in the half court, they had like 6 layups. That's where you kind of dig yourself a hole. We've got to be able to be better, in that first half. And I don't want to take away, because the way the guys are competing and fighting, and it's not like that we're not competing and fighting. I think we have to have more attention to detail. It's the turnovers, it's the careless passing, it's some lack of communication on coverages, where there was one in the first half where I think maybe Andre kind of thought there was a switch. He jumped out, and Gobert just slipped right to the basket to dunk. Like, those are the kind of things I think we have to take away. But I don't want to take away the way they're fighting and competing and battling, as a group. But you're right. It's been 2 games where, it's a hard way to live, being down by 30 points, just with maybe 9-something to go in the third against Sacramento, and then being down by 22 against these guys at the half. I mean, it's hard to win games like that. So. And again, I don't think it has anything to do with our effort. These guys are competing, they're playing hard. I just think we can be more detailed on some of the things I mentioned.
Thanks, Coach.